I hear the bell. Good afternoon. We'll just wait another minute or two. Hopefully, folks are finishing their coffee, coming on in. I hear the bell ringing. Come on in, have a seat. This is going to be a good one. We have all kinds of amazing people to hear from. Welcome, welcome. Come in, have a seat. Good afternoon. All right, I think I'll get started. Hopefully, we'll have more folks join us as they stop their mingling and their conversations and their connecting with brilliant people out there. It's always hard to stop and come on in, but hopefully, folks will join us. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heather Thompson. It's a pleasure to be with you all here today. I am the CEO of ITDP, the Institute for Transportation and Development Policy. If you don't know us, we're an NGO that we're celebrating our 40th year anniversary this year. And it's been our privilege to work with many cities and development banks around the world over those 40 years on a number of development projects. Which we will hopefully get to showcase today. I'm going to start by introducing our esteemed panelists. It's really my honor to be here today to guide this discussion. And then I'm going to set the context with one slide and a few comments on that slide just to give us a sense of what we're all here to talk about today. I also want to thank, of course, the World Bank and WRI for having us here today, and also to ClimateWorks, who is our sponsor for the session today. So I'm just going to go down the row here. Starting to my left is Mr. Ming Zhang, who is from the World Bank and is the Global Director for Urban Development. And it's really wonderful to have representation from the urban development sector, not just transportation, to share with us their priorities. To his left is Mr. Pablo Souza, who is the Secretary of Mobility from Salvador, Brazil. To his left is Maria Fernanda Ramirez Bernal, also known as Mafe. It's hard for me to say Maria Fernanda because I've known Mafe for years as Mafe. Mafe is joining us from Bogota, Colombia. I'm sure many of you know about Bogota, Colombia, a leader in our space. And she is the safety and sustainability lead for Despacio, which, if you don't know Despacio, there is an amazing local NGO in Bogota who's done amazing work throughout Colombia. So look them up if you're not aware. And then last but not least is Dr. Tierno Ah, who comes to us from Dakar, Senegal. We started the day with a beautiful image of the new BRT, electric BRT system from Dakar. And he has been one of the movers and shakers that has made that happen. And he is the General Director of the Executive Council for Sustainable Urban Transport, which in French is known as CETUD. So really, it's my honor to be here today to lead this discussion with such incredible experts. Again, I wanted to start our session hopefully with a slide that will come on the screen right about now. Oh, bravo. Again, ITDP is a nonprofit organization, and we work at all levels, including the project level, really getting projects on the ground. But we also try to influence discussions at the international level, including the climate COPs that happen every year. And this is a line chart that you can see in front of you that comes from a series of reports that we've done over the last couple of years called the Compact City Electrified reports. Our first report was done at the global level, and it was such a popular report that we've now done deep dives for Africa, Brazil, China, Egypt, India, Indonesia, Mexico, and the United States, as well as some states here in the US. And the time that we did this was in the run up to COP26 in Glasgow, which was right when we were coming out of the COVID pandemic. There was a lot of interest in electrification of vehicles. And at ITDP, we were very excited to see all of the interest in electrification. Of course, we know that we must get fossil fuels out of the transportation sector to meet our emissions targets. But we also know that investment in electrification alone will not get us to our targets. So this study was really about looking at what would it take to get to our climate targets. And what we found is that certainly if we're on business as usual, which is that red line at the top, we're not going to be within that blue threshold, which is what we need to meet our climate targets. But what we also realized is that we just focus on electrification alone, we're not going to get to our targets. If we just focus on shifting away from private transportation, car transportation, with a focus on public transportation, we also won't get to our targets. The only way we get there is when we focus on electrification along with investments in transit-oriented development, compact cities, as well as public transportation, walking and cycling. So essentially what we're talking about is investing in public transportation and compact cities to minimize the number of vehicles on the road and then electrifying the rest. And this was a first study that really included looking at emissions from the well to wheel, so from the complete production of vehicles, as well as the manufacture and disposal of vehicles, and the roads and bridges that we drive on. So it was a much more comprehensive study. We also know that this combination of electrification and compact city development is not only good for the climate, for saving climate emissions, reducing climate emissions, but also for equity. We know that many people around the world are not going to be able to afford a Tesla anytime soon. And so we really need to make sure that these investments are going hand in hand for equity reasons alone. And they make a great pair. At ITDP, we like to call this the love story of having electrification and compact city development together. And it's not only good for climate and equity, it also saves us money. It helps reduce energy demand by 40% and can save us $5 trillion every year by 2050 from reduced road building and bridge building and vehicle emissions. So the picture that you see here is actually a snapshot from the work that we did in Brazil. This is not our global study, but a snapshot in Brazil. And so great to have Salvador here representing us from Brazil. And of course, there's all eyes are on Brazil this year. We know that the COP will be hosted in Belém, so a lot of attention. And also that the government there is doing huge amounts of investment in great public transportation investments, which hopefully we'll hear a little bit of a snapshot from the example of Salvador. And this, again, this study was done by ITDP, but in partnership with UC Davis, but also with some great participation of local groups in Brazil, including ICCT Brazil, C40 Cities, the Federal University of Rio, the Institute of Energy and Environment, and the Climate Observatory, which includes many NGOs. So this is not just our opinion, but really represents the NGO community. So with that as a backdrop, really we want to pull out some great examples from around the world that really bring out the examples of implementation, which is what we're all here today to hear about, with that combination of electrification and public transport compact city development investment. So with that, let me turn to our panelists. And Tierno, I'm going to start with you. because we heard this morning about the incredible investment that has gone in Dakar, Senegal, with the first electric bus rapid transit system on the continent of Africa. And I know it took a lot of planning and a lot of effort. So if you could maybe just share a little bit about your experience with this combination of electrification and public transportation, some of the challenges, some of the lessons that you've learned along the way.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to warmly thank the World Bank, WRI, and ITDP for the opportunity to share our experience in electric BRT in Dakar. As you know, the metropolis of Dakar faces accelerated urban and demographic growth. Currently home to around 4 million inhabitants, its population is expected to reach 7 million by 2040. And at this year, will double motorized transport. Additionally, a study conducted by CETUD in 2022 on the course of negative externalities of transport related to road transportation revealed that Senegalese economy loses 6% of GDP annually. This is enormous. From that, faced with the challenge of traffic jam, congestion, air pollution, injuries and fatalities on our roads, the government of Senegal has decided to shift its policy towards collective, active, and sustainable mobility. That's why we have strong investment right now in mass transit. The first project is the Express Regional Train, B-Mode, diesel and electric, but we really shift in electric mobility with the support of World Bank and European Investment Bank with the full BRT. How we build our strategies. I think that it is important to retain three pillars. The first one is to strengthen the local authority of transportation. CETUD is the oldest one, but we see that in lots of African cities, they don't have right now for integration and coordination or local authority of transportation. This is the first step for us. And it is very important to tackle this challenge to strengthen CETUD with a new law coming in 2022. But we work hard before implementing the BRT for the support, political support, and to have our financement. The second one is to have a high-level validation of the sustainable urban plan. For the urban plan, we have the support of local government and central government. And in this plan, we try to do more collective mobility and active mobility. Last but not least, it is very important in the case of Dakar, and this is replicable for many of African cities, to mobilize financement, but mobilize financement with private sector. For that, through PPP and leveraging green financing mechanism. What we do with that, we build a corridor with 18 kilometers. This corridors is designed to carry up 300,000 passengers per a day. Sorry. We still are right now in the ramp-up period, but I have some results to share. We addressing effectively 12 SDGs goals. And with that, 12% more population of Dakar can join the city center in less than 1 hour. We can see that we create 1,000 jobs, and for this job, we target at least 55% for women. This is great for our shift. And we try also to cut off CNG, and with this BRT, we have around 59,000 tons per year economized for a safe environment.
So impressive, so amazing. And just to the combination of all of the things that we want, the sustainable urban mobility plans that really create that long-term platform, the establishment of the right governance, and then the impacts that we want, especially the access to new places and new jobs. That's incredible. Pablo, I want to turn to you next. I know that we'll have a little bit of a little teaser here, a STA award ceremony for Dakar later. Maybe Salvador can be the next STA winner. Can you tell us about your plans? I know there's a new BRT, maybe some electric buses coming along. Tell us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I also want to say thank you for the World Bank, for WRI and ITDP for this invitation. For those who doesn't know Salvador, we are the third biggest city in Brazil. We have 2.4 million people in our city and a fleet around 2,000 buses. We have started our plans in 2018, so we also have a mobility sustainable plan, and we start the test in 2019 with small unities, small projects around the city. And we have been part of the To Me a Bus mission. So it's really important for us. It was really important for us because we had received a huge cooperation, a huge technical assistance from all those institutions who made part of the To Me a Bus mission. Salvador at the beginning was one of the 5 cities in Brazil that received this cooperation. And our first electric buses just came in 2022. As you have mentioned it, thank you. We have 8 units on BRT. So it was our first step on this way. And we had started, as I've mentioned, 2022. And it was a small number, but was suitable for this step that we need first to learn with small quantity, and then we are working to improve with 19 electric buses in a financial operation with the World Bank. We also built a terminal, a public terminal with 20 space to recharge electric buses, which means 10 stations, but we use double chargers, DC, so the fast ones. And we are working 2 waves during the night shift. So we are working the night shifts, but also during the day, between the peak hours, all the buses can recharge over there. Our electric station, our main electric station, sorry, it's located in the main BRT station, which is Rodoviária BRT station. So it doesn't have any need to go through garage a long way from there, so they're just around, so they just go have a quick charge and come back to the operation. So it's really efficient. Other aspects I want to say, that's this initial location for BRT was really efficient as well, because as we have dedicated lanes, so it was easy to manage. It was a environment controlled by our staff. So it was a first step, really good for us.
That's amazing. Yeah, we hear that so often from cities that are worried about putting their buses with new batteries where they don't have a lot of experience into congestion, where they're just going to sit in traffic and use their battery, right? So with bus rapid transit, there's a dedicated lane and you actually can control those buses and you know how far you can go with your battery and manage it much more easily. So it's a perfect place to test electrification and electric buses. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. Mafe, let me turn to you next. Bogota is no city of I think we all know of Bogota because of it being a real stellar example of investment in bus rapid transit systems, one of the first really large electric bus fleets on the planet. So much to learn from Bogota. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that we don't talk enough about, which is the network effects? The Compact City Electrified report was really about bringing all of the elements that we want together: compact city development, walking, cycling, access to public transport. You all have done an incredible job thinking about that network. Tell us more, what goes into that thinking and what are the impacts that you've seen?
Well, that's, after those words, it's kind of a big deal for me to be sitting here talking with you guys. Well, one thing that we've seen in Bogota, and we talked about it before getting up here, is talking about La Rolita. And La Rolita is a beautiful project from Bogota with electric buses with a very significant name. The first thing is that Rolita in Spanish is little Rola. Rola is a person from Bogota. I'm a Rola. And being the cute thing that you want to do is La Rolita. It's a cute little Rola like myself. But the thing is that what does this company do? What does this new public transportation system do? It's taking advantage of what's going on. We didn't know anything about electric transportation. We didn't have infrastructure. We didn't have charging stations. We didn't have anything. So there was a lot of opportunities to do everything. So from the planning of the routes, having women, children, the elderly, planning the routes to where they wanted them to go, to be included in walking networks, being able to connect them to very remote cycle paths. So you have the opportunity to do that because there's nothing done. For the charging stations or the parking, the huge charging garage, you could actually have the people from the neighborhood build those huge charging stations. And another thing is, who's going to drive the buses? Who's going to fix the buses? Because we don't know anything. And we can take advantage of something, is that we don't know anything, is that when we say we say no man can fix this. Maybe a woman can. So if a man cannot drive a bus, if a man cannot fix the electric bus, what about women? So that's the huge meaning of La Rolita. It's a lot of women from Bogota driving the buses, fixing the buses, being included in that entire process. So the entire network is, yes, we have a physical network. The buses ride on streets, new streets who are built by people from the neighborhood, but the buses are at least 70% of the drivers are women. So you have a new driving force, a new workforce that wasn't there before, because that's something that we found out. I mean, if nobody can do it, we have to teach people. And what if we teach more women than men to do that? So that's not only the physical improvement, the physical network, but the intangible. What's going on socially after that? So it's riding, walking. When you talk about women, you talk about trips of care. So it's women walking around, being feeling safe, to be able to walk them by themselves or walk with their children. So it's that entire intangible network. That's thanks to the electric system.
Thank you. It's amazing. So not only the physical network, but also the social network, the community network, the innovation network coming from the women. That's incredible. Ming, let me turn to you next. We've talked about a number of projects on the ground, which the World Bank has been part of in some way or another. You're coming to us from the urban development sector, and we're here talking about transportation, and we're so happy to have your perspective. Tell us a little bit more about how the World Bank is addressing this. You know, we're talking about projects that can save emissions, save money, save energy, but we all know that it's easier said than done to get these projects financed and implemented, again, which is what we're here about today. So tell us, how are you approaching this? What guidance do you give cities and countries looking for investment?
Thanks a lot, Heather, and thanks a lot for the invitation to the urban folks to come to Transforming Transportation. I think the city space is transport is really important element, but the linkage with the rest of the urban elements of cities, such as land use planning, housing, etc., are really critical. On the financing issue, I just want to maybe highlight a little bit some of the research we're doing from the sort of urban side on the financing needs and how to meet the financing needs, incorporating the consideration of climate change. We are actually in the final phase of a study, a report, which is going to the editors right now for publication, and really look at the urban climate financing. And it is a sort of estimate of the needs of financing, both for related to climate mitigation and adaptation. And the range is quite big. And of the and that includes, for example, buildings, flood risk management, urban heat, energy efficiency, but of course, transport is a big part of that. And from that sort of report, they estimate the annual investment needs for transport investment related to climate change. It's for low and middle income countries, it's about $75 billion, between $72 and $78 billion per year. It's a very sort of big needs. Now, but it's not just about the numbers. How do you come up with the financing? And you mentioned World Bank, other MDBs could be one source of financing. But also we're talking about other financing mechanism, bonds or green bonds or PPPs. So these are the different financing mechanisms. But for the report, what we are saying is, before we look at the financing, we need to look at the funding, because the finance, how do you mobilize finance, depend on the revenue streams you can come. And that sometimes include, of course, the fare box revenue, which in the transport side, probably not enough even sometimes to even cover the operating cost. But then you look at the possibilities of land value capture that can add to the additional financing funding stream. That may not even be sufficient. You need to look at the general sort of municipal capacity for own source revenue, property tax and others. And you need to look at the national transfers to the municipalities, and sometimes, if possible, international, for example, carbon credit that you may be able to. So you really need to look at, to do finance, you need to look at different funding source and how to make the funding, for example, national transfers, to make it in a way that make it easier to do the mobilizing financing, for example, and that different countries are doing differently. Some are doing the transfer in a way that cities cannot rely on the transfer to borrow for investment. So then that's on the funding source is really important to the fundamental to mobilize financing. And the final, I'm being talking too much, but I think it's very important is the efficiency part. this link to the chart you mentioned at the beginning. If we do urban planning well, if we do smart investment planning, integrated urban planning with the investment, you can actually reduce the cost of financing needs quite significantly. And that's the part I think that professionals, technical support with the local government, how to make that happen. So overall financing, funding, but also efficiency gains, it's very important.
Thank you. That's so much. That's really incredible. I'm not speaking too much at all. Those were incredible words of wisdom that boil down a very complicated idea that we all face, but funding, finance, and efficiency. And I think too often we don't pay enough attention to that point on efficiency. We just build more and more roads thinking that we're going to build ourselves out of the problems, but we create more problems and it's just more expensive, as you said. And again, we know that we need more funding in general. We need more money to invest in all of this. So we should try and minimize the problem by focusing on more compact development. So there's just less problems and less roads to build, but more public transportation, and we solve the problems and serve more people more efficiently. Pablo, I'm going to turn back to you because I know you're right in the middle of this situation, thinking about how are you going to bring all of the funding and the finance together. So you shared some of the ideas of the plans and how you're investing in BRT, but also now electrification. But can you tell us a little bit more about how the investment itself is coming together, the different sources of funding and finance, national level, World Bank sources? How are you bringing the money to the table?
So for e-buses, we're developing a finance operation with the World Bank, with our partner, for bringing 90 electric buses for the BRT fleet, which is going to be around 100% of all BRT buses electric. So we are hopefully going to have this goal next year, so by 2026, which is really important for us. And also we receive a technical assistant from the World Bank, to have our business model regarding this operation, so which was really important for us. For those who doesn't understand how it works in Brazil, so all the private contractors for transport in Brazil, they have like 20% interest rate in the year for those operations. So when the government go to the market and have this kind of solution, as mentioned by Mr. Ming, with the World Bank, so it's cheap for the people who are using the service. And it's really efficient for the use of the public resources, because we don't need to give like subsidies for the transportation, and it makes the electrification really, how can I say, attractive. So it's really good when you have those kind of policy that provide us the ways to do it, not only regarding the climate perspective, but objective ways to do it on practice.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that's such an important point. You know, so often we're talking about the upfront capital expenditure, but also the ongoing operational expenditure. And cities and governments are used to having to subsidize forever. And you know, it's good for the public. That's a good investment. But when you instead have electric fleets that you finance upfront through low interest loans, then that means that you plug them into your electricity. Hopefully that's all renewable energy and it's green and it's clean. And it's much less expensive, right? So you're basically paying more upfront, but then you're reducing your need for subsidies over time. And for most governments, that is a winning equation. So yeah, that is such an important point to be made. And another reason why electric vehicles are such the great combination. Tierno, can you tell us a little bit more? I'm sure you've been looking at all of these equations for Dakar as well. Tell us a little bit more of how you brought the financing together, some of the things that you had to consider along the way.
Well, thank you. The main challenge we have with our full electric BRT, I can focus on two challenges: the recruitment of the private operators and managing interface risk. The recruitment of the private operators, cause our option is to finance the acquisition of the rolling stock, operation, and maintenance through an international tender with a PPP. And when we do that, we have also to manage interface of contracts between infrastructure, equipment, system, and the need of operating performance. So from the financial structure, we have the technical support, the assistant of IFC and the World Bank team. And we can return 4 major lessons in the Dakar BRT project. We have to build for BRT electrification a clear allotment strategy. We know that investment in infrastructure and system and equipment is very heavy, and this financement need public resources. Okay, and for sure, the private sector take acquisition and operating with the electric rolling stock. We have also to balance risk between public and private sector. But in our case, as you know, this is very difficult to have high capex and as electric BRT and have enough resource for operating costs. So we have a minimum traffic guarantee in the case of Dakar, and this minimum guarantee help the private sector to de-risk some financement. We also see that we have, for acceptation, a strong local content. So we have to work with local operators and our sovereign fund for having in board our local operator. For that, 30% of the private financement coming have the support of the sovereign fund of Senegal. And last, it is, in our point of view, it is impossible to do what we deliver in Dakar without developing a tax regime dedicated to green mobility. So for that, we have the support of the government of Senegal. And I would like to finish by saying that financing green mobility and accelerating development of electric mobility need 2 things. With development partners, I invite World Bank, all development partners to work on appropriate financement of mass transit and green mobility in terms of guarantees and subsidies. This is the real issue. for developing and accelerating. And this effort can allow us to have the bankability of projects. And for the government, it will be necessary to develop a specific framework for decarbonization of transport. That's what we do in Dakar. And after this reform, we need to go in the next step by having a strong local impact by covering all the value chain. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's just, you painted such a holistic picture of not only starting earlier with the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, that really is the plan for the city, but then also the plan starting from a sovereign support from your national government, but all the way down to involving the local supply chain, but also different subsidies and guarantees along the way to bring in the private sector. It's really such an incredible model. Mafe, let me turn to you next. Tierno mentioned, involving local suppliers, the local operators, which is always key, I think, to success to really get a public transport system transition to happen. Can you tell us a little bit more maybe about La Rulita or another example in Bogota of really getting to the communities, addressing vulnerable communities, how that's been brought into the models there?
Okay. Well, from what we know, from what research has shown, is that, and I think we all know this, that people need to move in a more efficient way, in a safer way. So the first thing is that what electric buses do is they're more efficient, of course, not only because they emit less pollution, but also the electric systems are safer for everybody outside and inside the bus. So there's one vulnerability check is that pedestrians are going to be safer because of those buses, because they have better sensors around buses. They feel, they see children where the driver is not seeing. So they're safer for the people, especially outside the buses. But the other thing is that, well, at least in La Rolita, the routes are reaching harder, really far away places from the normal routes. They go to our equivalent to favelas. They go to those places because it's possible to charge the buses, or the charging stations are very in the periphery of the city. So they reach those kind of areas, and of course, if you're bringing the buses to the people, you're bringing the people to the city. So you have more opportunities, more job opportunities, leisure opportunities. So people are going to be less vulnerable. They're going to earn more money. They're going to be happy. They're going to be plentiful. And of course, better air quality, better cities for pedestrians. But the fact that they're safer, less noisy, less pollutant, it's going to be better for mental health for entire communities, because they're not worried about a child being run over or maybe having some respiratory problems. So that's another check. So that's how you start involving people. And like I said before, if people build the system, they work in the system, is part of they're part of it, they feel part of it. So that's very good. And also, like I said before, even working in the system has better job opportunities. Bringing men and women into the world makes it so much better because it's equitative. It's not only teaching women how to drive a bus or how to fix a bus, but it's sometimes even teaching men how to work with women. Because no, really, it's not as simple. Actually, we did this study in Despacio. It's not just teach them how to fix a bus. It's Teach them how to fix a bus. Find them to teach them how to fix a bus. Allow them to believe they can actually fix the bus or drive it. And then the entire thing is that where are they gonna work? Do they need changing rooms? Do they need separate changing rooms? How is their physical environment going to be? How is the relationship with their coworkers? Is he going to know how to behave? Is she going to know how to behave? And then you go deep down. What about the families? We did some interviews, and even some women said that I'm here thanks to my family. They pushed me forward. And some others said, I'm here despite my family because they didn't want me here. So you have to fight all that. If you saw the social media post when they were talking about La Rolita, half of the media posts were like, oh my God, a woman driving a bus, we're gonna die. This is the end of the world. And it's normal because it's normal. So it's the entire thing of how to put people working in the same quality of life in the same conditions. So it's a really interesting and cool experiment. You're gonna have a lot of fun with that.
Thank you. I think so often we go to places and we're talking with the city officials that are saying, we really should have better public transportation, or I should say, we're trying to convince the decision makers, the leaders, that we want better public transportation, but often they don't take the public transportation. They're in their big fancy cars in the back seat on the phone, sitting in traffic, thinking that there's no other solution. But we know that there are other solutions. And when we bring the communities in to actually develop the solutions, then they're developed in a better way because they're actually serving the people that they're built for. And we need more of our decision makers, actually experiencing public transportation so that they know the ways that we need to improve it and can make it better. Ming, let me turn to you. Again, we're talking about all of these examples on the ground, really inspirational examples. But it's difficult to meet all these needs. Tell us a little bit more about how the World Bank approaches this. You told us earlier about the importance of funding and finance and efficiency, and that all makes a lot of sense. But how does that idea meet the needs of national governments who have investment plans like we hear about in Senegal, in Dakar, and Salvador? How does the bank, come to the table and meet the needs of these investment plans? How do we put those pieces together?
Yeah. So in general, the World Bank, probably the same as the other development banks, we are there to support the national government. These are sort of the national, it's not we want to do a fancy project there. We are there to support the national development plans. Now, there is a process of prioritization, both on the government side and on the World Bank side. On the government side, there's a lot of financing needs, from nutrition to education, to water, to flood, to transport. So the government side needs to do the prioritization. And from the World Bank side, we, in consultation with the national government, see how do we prioritize in particular country what to do. So this process of having this country partnership framework where we agree on the sort of prioritization, this where as professionals working on transport or working on urban development, we would like all the projects to be transport or urban development. But that there's a sort of your Minister of Finance, he or she has the unenviable task to say no, have to say no to others, and we follow that sort of process going there. So that's the overall on the financing side. But I think with that, we do look at working in many ways with other development banks, try to work together on one sort of government plan. No, particularly in some of the urban transport field, where the financing needs is big. So we cannot do this alone. I remember probably like a Quito Metro. It was the World Bank financed it, IDB financed it. So you sort of went together. In some of the others, the recent project we were preparing in India, the sort of new capital city, we're jointly working together with ADB, Asian Development Bank, from the very beginning to do sort of everything together. So that's on the sort of how we do the sort of financing. And I think the things sort of we work, it's important we work with NGOs and others. Really, when you decide to finance, quite often money is not the most difficult issue. What's difficult issue is the capacity, the technical design, and a big part is the institutional part. I think, Tiano, you mentioned at the beginning, one of the first things you did was to set up a transport authority, have an institution who can, to some extent, reinforce the revenue, the accountability to provide a service. These are the sort of things usually that takes the majority of efforts in terms of design work on the sort of good projects.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Let me ask you one follow-up question, Ming, which is how, you talked about these last issues. How can we talk about bankable projects a lot? How can the civil society organizations and others help develop those bankable projects? And maybe those key elements that you mentioned at the end are the ones, but is there anything else that you would add for those of us that are trying to get projects into your pipeline so they can be the next Dakar or the next Salvador? What can we do?
Yeah, so I think what in that report I mentioned the efficiency gains. So these are general terms, but really how to make it happen. It's not just TOD, but making transit-oriented development in that specific city, in these sites, with this complicated land ownership structure, the existing, these are the difficulties, these are the challenges where external support would be useful. Of course, the understanding of the local situation is critical. I think this is where I quite often see the clients also looking for ideas, looking for examples. It's not just the best practice. No, it's like what in this situation, what are some of the inspirations so that you could see? I think those are the things that quite often really, really helpful. Even just sometimes it's most useful to have seeing is much better than sort of reading about things. But which place to see? There's so many good examples. Where to go? Which place is most fit for my specific city in that situation? I think these are the things where NGO and other support would be needed. And it's not just best practice knowledge piece. It's how to make it work in the local situation.
The local context. Well, so it sounds like we need a Despacio in every big city around the world to be that continuity, that NGO that can work on the local context. Tierno, I know we're going to get more from you later. So I think maybe let me turn to Pablo with the last question. You mentioned the Tumi eBus mission. I think that was a big effort that got you started. Maybe you can just say a couple more words about this kind of NGO pipeline support that helped you all get started. Any other lessons?
Sure. Let me just first break the protocol and mention this inspiration for Salvador as well. What I mean, like it's Colombia, the Transmillennial, and also Las Rolitas, because before we start BRT, we have been through Colombia just to better understand how Mr. Yang says, how it works in our reality. So Transmillennial is the biggest BRT operation outside China. So it was really good to go there to better understand. And we also developed a model based on the Las Rolitas. We have nowadays 7 women's drivers. The first 5, they went domestic. They went victim for domestic violence. So it was really important to prepare all the drivers to welcome them in appropriate mode. So what Mafé says, it's really important because one of the biggest challenge back home was how to deal with the drivers to welcome those women. So those small details, as restrooms have appropriate place, it's really important in those projects. So coming back to Tumi, we had the same situation when we start to do it. We doesn't have like people with appropriate knowledge for how to deal with electric buses. So one of the best things with this cooperation was going to the cities who had developed those models before. So go there, go with the operators, go with the technical teams, and it doesn't matter the size of the operation, you know, because like you have huge operations in China and you have big operations in Colombia as well. When we had started in Brazil, São Paulo has 20 electric buses and was the biggest fleet in Brazil at the moment. So we have but 8, and everyone said, oh, but only 8, but the biggest one in Brazil has 20 at the moment. And now São Paulo is starting like 1,000 a year. So it's really different. So one of the things that we need from e-bus side in the city's perspective, it's keep having the federal government support and have our colleagues here, the National Secretary and the Director of Mobility, with legal backgrounds, legal regulation to support us with the decisions in the city, and also the support from TUMI and other NGO partnerships. They're really helpful because we have been in a lot of workshops, a lot of change of best practice in other cities to better understand like our self models, because as Brazil doesn't have a standard model, each city needs to develop the self model. So that's what we made. The first 8 buses was not that hard, but now with 19, it's going to be harder. And we have plans for the future. So our sustainable transport plan, it becomes with 40% of all the transport fleet, which is 1,800 buses by 2032. It's going to be quite challenging. And by 2049, as much of you, it's going to be zero emission buses in all the cities. So it's step by step, but
amazing. I love that, step by step. And that figure that I showed you at the beginning of the session, that in order for us to get to our goals by 2050, we have some time, but by 2050, we need 100% of the fleet to be electric. Right now, Brazil is on target for 20%. So we know we can do it, but we need to ramp up. And we also need much more investment in metros and bus rapid transit systems, which again, I think we're on our way. I think what is the number? I think it's 5,000 kilometers of BRT. Yes, 5,000 kilometers of BRT by 2050. But it's happening. We're on our way. Tierno, I'm going to give the last word to you. Tell us, there's going to be folks flocking to Dakar to get inspiration from you, the first electric BRT in the African continent. I think maybe we can call it a best practice for now, but there might be some cities on your heels. Tell us maybe one more last word of inspiration to bring people to your city to see your system.
I think, as Ming said, Bogota inspired us very, very much. And we see that with the implementation and the first phase of operating, we try to do the leapfrog that permit us with the sustainable urban plan to deliver more mobility, active mobility, and collective mobility for livable cities. And we see that this goal of clean transportation can bring us together, politicians, users, and all stakeholders. So our next step is to accelerate the implementation of our sustainable plan, and we try to have 7 more lines, 175 kilometers for active mobility, and all this effort will permit us to cut off CNG and be aligned with our international commitment for climate change.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, thank you all so much for your participation. Really inspiration. Clearly, so much inspiration coming from Bogota already. I think so many cities around the world have been inspired. Incredible progress in Salvador, which we look forward to continuing to watch. Incredible, ambitious projects already in Dakar, but it sounds like even more ambition ahead. And Ming, we're going to be looking out for that report. Sounds like it's got a lot of lessons learned, funding, finance, efficiency. We have huge ambitions to meet our climate goals, but again, with investment in compact city development, walking, cycling, so we can increase access for public transportation. Let's keep the number of private vehicles on the road to a minimum, and let's electrify the rest and meet our climate goals. And of course, our equity goals in serving people around the world. Thank you so much for your attendance, and we'll see you around. Thank you.